Hello folks and welcome back to episode 3 of season 2 Life Behind the Trig. Just wanted to let you folks know this one will be based around training. We've kind of opened the floor to questions and it's going to be about our preparation leading in to what's what and what Sinclair and myself do. But we've got a few things to say. First of all, we've managed to get sort of affiliated with Spotify. So there's now like a subscriber option available. I think it's like a fee you pay. We're not going to sit and shout it out because we're not doing this for money after all. We're doing it for the fame, obviously. And there's an option there. If you want to support that, it's great. It'll just go towards equipment upgrades, etc. And the affiliate status just means that I guess we're further up the list on Spotify of the Elusive Highland Games podcasts. Obviously, we've got the new logo. Sinclair, that was you played a big part in that.
Yeah, we've got so obviously the last series we did was way back in 2020. I can't believe it's been 3 years actually since that, but we've kind of updated the logo. We got a local Inverness company, Creative Sign and Print, pulled together a nice looking logo for us. So the plan with the logo is to eventually get it on t-shirts and maybe on some baseball caps. We're doing a trial run at the moment, just to see how that looks. And I think the t-shirts are actually ready to pick up. So I'll be heading down south to see my wife's family over Christmas. So I'll take you a few samples down, Kyle.
Cannot wait. I'm going to try it on, wear it like pyjamas. We'll never be out it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I remember a few years back we got some Team Alba 51'1" Hamish Davidson t-shirts printed up, and I think I did a run of 10 with the idea of giving them out to people. But I'm pretty sure I kept about 8 of the 10, and I've since worn them for the last 3 or 4 years.
Dishing them out as Christmas presents, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. For anyone that doesn't know, Hamish Davidson, we talked about him in Series 1, but he was a real character of the Highland Games from Scotland. And in his kind of later years, he sadly passed away, but in his later years, he would run games and commentate on them. And he was outstanding on the mic, and we'd often talk about how old ladies in the streets of Scotland still whisper 51-1 with a heavy ball.
Yeah, I sometimes feel like the word legend's thrown about too much, but Hamish is the kind of definition thoroughly through and through, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. He comes from a cool era as well. So he threw a lot with my dad. My dad won Worlds in 1994, but Hamish was about 5 years older. And at that time, he'd have thrown a lot with the likes of Jeff Capes, Douglas Edmonds. And Douglas Edmonds then obviously went on to set up a lot of strongman events, including World's Strongest Man. But it was quite cool in that era because a lot of the Highland Games athletes like Bill Anderson, Hamish Davidson would compete in the likes of Britain's Strongest Man. So he certainly was a man who was full of stories, was Hamish.
Oh, you can't doubt that at all. So yeah, but before we go off on a tangent and end up talking about something and waffling on, today's episode's sort of focus and onus is going to be on winter training, questions about our training and things that maybe we do that you wouldn't think of.
Yeah, I think it's a topic that always comes up, and we even discuss it throughout the season. It's probably changing for me anyway as I get older. It's definitely changing. I'll be 37 next game season, so we'll talk about how my focus is changing a bit. But what you've had 2 really consistent years, Kyle. What's your training going to look like this winter, or what are you currently doing?
So one thing I did, if we're looking at it as a general structure, I tend to try and force myself to not throw in September once the season ends. So for anyone who doesn't compete in Scotland or hasn't been over, our season tends to end, I would say, the first, if not second week of September. And I normally try and force myself to do absolutely no training. But I always get the itch and I'll end up doing something like as soon as you just want to do something. So this year I've forced myself not to train September, and I actually took October off because I had a weird niggle in I think it's adductor on the inside of my right leg. And I thought, right, I'm going to book the physio, I'm not going to do too much. And I've mentioned before, my wife's pregnant just now, so I'm sure that'll play into this equation as well. But We started swimming together once or twice a week, and that was basically my October. Was a bit
Yeah,
of fitness, swimming just a kilometre in the swimming pool, sort of as quick as I can, but not trying, to break any records. That was how
yeah,
that's how I sort of entered my winter training. So it was a bit later than normal, but I'm kind of feeling fresher for it. My general focus this year is I want to sort of my standing putt came kind of good this year. So if we're talking events, I'm going to try and transition some speed and momentum from my glide into my standing putt. I'm working on a few things with my 28. There's a few things in my head I want to try that I've not really implemented. So I don't want to sit and talk about them because they could be a load of absolute nonsense. And honestly, the thing with my hammer is just trying to get reps in, and seeing how
yeah.
that comes. Weight
I
for
lo-
height, I'm going to do some work because I was inconsistent as hell. So my plan is to do volume throws earlier and do the technical work. Probably the transition of 2023 into 24. Get the reps in January, February, and then maybe transition into some more. Like I'm doing quite a bit of plyos. I started them quite early. So I guess my winter training is going to be to try and refine events. Not all of them, but some of them. What about yourself, Sinky? What's your
yeah, well, I
mindset?
was just about to say, I love how, and it probably highlights one of the differences in us as throwers, because I love how straight away your answer to that question is actually focused on throwing on the Highland Games, whereas, like traditionally for me, my answer to that question would be straight into the weight room, and I would predominantly focus on lifting in the winter, and I think that is a difference in us, which I'll come on to. But I would agree that with the season finishing relatively late, and it seems to be getting longer all the time. There's games being added, which kind of take us right into the middle
Yeah,
of September now. Um, but for those first couple of months, it's really just to try and keep moving. At the end of a long season, I mean, we compete from May right through till September, and it's not as if we've got any breaks in between. We're literally throwing most weekends, Saturday and Sunday. So by the end of September, you're always quite beat up, and to be honest, you need a break. I've probably made the mistake in previous years of just going straight into winter training. Um, there's lots of good resource out there, and I've read them all over the years, I think. Um, but where I've taken that break from is probably Mike Pekoski's training manual. I think it was called the Contrarian Approach to Highland Games, and he talked in that about between the end of the season, sort of mid to late September, to almost January, just focus on fitness. So don't worry too much about heavy weights in the gym. Um, Try and get some bits and pieces done around the house. You've probably not spent a lot of time with family over the summer period. So just focus on those things before really then hitting the ground running in January. And I would say that's kind of what I tried to do the last couple of years. But I certainly am going to have a change in focus leading into 2024. So last season, 23, I probably came into the game season the strongest I've ever been in the gym. Um, and it didn't necessarily transfer onto the field. Um, so my approach this year is going to kind of take a leaf out of your book and focus a bit more on the events. Um, I'm relatively consistent across the board. Obviously, have some weaknesses in weight over the bar and caber, and again, those aren't necessarily linked to gym lifts. I think I just need to spend a lot more time on the technical aspects of those events. But yeah, relatively similar in that from mid September through to now, I've just been doing some quite light activity. You mentioned swimming. What does your gym work, or what has your gym work looked like, Kyle, from mid September to now?
So September, I literally did nothing. My plan was nothing, and then October into November, I basically I know Matt Vincent used to have like a volume, a hypertrophy sort of volume squat thing that he'd recommend. It was like 10 tens. So
Yeah,
I
that's
was
right.
literally going into the gym 3 times a week. When I say the gym, I mean my garage, and I was doing 10 sets of 10 squats at 100 kilos, and then a little bit of, as I would call, beach muscles, and that was like my gentle entry into training, like just getting something in the legs. Because I don't know about yourself, but my squat seems to be my biggest fade whenever I take a break.
Yeah,
Like I feel like bench things like that come back pretty quickly, cleans come back pretty fast, but it tends to be my squats that fade. Even my deadlift, I came back and like I was over 200 pretty easily for like pretty sizable sets. But honestly, like I've entered December, and I was lucky that a few years ago, Chris Beetham, who we had in the podcast in season one, he wrote me a whole like entourage and quite a few months of programming, and it definitely worked because that's what sort of took my momentum into like last season, as in 2022. I just followed his program. So for this year, I've sort of just cycled them, added new programs. I've put a few new exercises in. I've just changed reps to sort of make do. So honestly, my stuff just now, I'm pretty sure I've got a 1 month that's a standalone, and that's like a conditioning sort of month. I'm doing that for December, and then when I go into January, I'll hit his sort of programs, and I'll do that up until I'd probably say May, and then I'll switch to doing like what I'd call strength maintenance. Last year, I actually trained weights wise into June and sort of took June as like a casualty. I sort of accepted I'm not going to throw far in June. I'm going to keep doing my training a month longer, and that was just trying to sort of peak, as you call it, for Worlds in Fergus. I don't think we know when Worlds is next year or whether we'll even be invited, but I'll probably try and have a look at that and put that into the equation as well. It's something I've done for the first time myself the last year, so something obviously went well somewhere. But my onus, I would definitely say, it basically goes early reps, more reps, probably lesser weight, and then it sort of changes onus as you go through to, obviously when you're during the season, you don't want to be absolutely wrecking your body. That's what you call low rep PB territory. I don't know what your general take on that is.
yeah, pretty similar to be honest. Again, I've read lots of different training manuals. Of for a good few years, I followed Matt Vincent's as well, and I think I've taken a lot from that. Um, I've also read Dan McKim's. I think it's called Behemoth, um, which was really interesting. And I felt Dan's was quite high volume, but it was also high frequency, and you were training up to 5 days a week in the gym. My body can't handle that. I tend to be a maximum of 3 days in the gym now. Um, so in the build up to the new year, so from I suppose through November, December, I'll just phase in, and I won't really track weight on anything. It's really just about getting in the gym, feeling a bit of weight, um, working on some mobility, and not really worrying about percentages or anything. Whereas when I hit January, um, with those 3 sessions per week, I will be focused a bit more on percentages, and I suppose that's probably quite a good place to start if we're talking about gym lifts, and then we'll come on to throwing after. But to reach a good level in the games, what would you say are average kind of lifts? I mean, if we take power lifts first, so squat, bench, and deadlift, and
Oof.
then just some basic Olympic movements, so maybe a clean and a press or a snatch. What where do you stand, and where do you think people need to be to throw at a reasonable level?
So for you to rock up to a games and like be able to pick up a caber runway, get a nice pull, throw like say 13 foot weight at the bar, like what's your sort of, this is the numbers you want to be hitting? Is that how we're wording this?
Yeah, I think so. Just so like we don't have classes in Scotland, but if you were to be a good level A class thrower, if you like, which for us would be a top amateur and someone who's coming in and competing well in certain events in the Open, what would you imagine that reasonable numbers would look like?
Let's go powerlifting first. I would say that I'm probably on the low end here because I put myself. I'm not a strength thrower, so I would
Yeah,
say, like in my head, if you can bench 100 kilograms, like
yeah,
for a couple of reps, nothing crazy. I think if you can say back squat 150 maybe,
yeah,
and if you can deadlift say 160, 180 along those numbers, I think you'll do okay. Obviously, you
Yeah,
can easily add to that, and that'll sort of make you more of a threat, shall we say? What's your three numbers?
yeah, probably quite similar. I think for that kind of A class level thrower, I think to have a baseline strength around those numbers is likely the minimum requirement. As we know, throwing's very different, and a lot of strength is specific, and will come through your actual on the field reps that you're doing. Um, but without that baseline strength, you're not going to be able to do those reps. Your body's just not going to be robust enough. Um, Coming in, I think I've always been naturally quite strong, and I mean my numbers I've built up in the power lifts where I'm probably looking to always have somewhere around a 300 kilo deadlift. I like to be squatting about 260 kilos, and then my best bench, which is a weaker event for me just due to a shoulder dislocation through rugby. But I like to be up close to 180 on the bench, whereas everyone's different. And like Lauren Coulthard, who for a number of years was a top thrower in Scotland and is now he's still a top thrower, but living in Canada, competed well at the World Championships this year and is still winning a lot of games in sort of North America. He always claimed that he didn't bench press over 100 kilograms, yet he was putting the 16-pound stone over 55 foot. Um, so I do think like the numbers that you referred to would be lower end baseline. If you're progressing up into the open class, I think you'd probably need to be squatting over 200 kilos. I think you'd need to be deadlifting 220, and I think you'd probably need to be benching closer to 130, 140 kilos. Um, just because with the with the volume of competition and number of throws that you're going to need to be taking, um, you have to have quite solid baseline numbers. I think just to deal with that volume.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was sitting almost in awe there. You talking about some of your numbers you want to hit. Like, say it comes round and it's May, and you said to me, what are the numbers you'd want to lifted by then? Like, listening to what you've just said, I reckon if I can squat like 220 for a couple of reps, say three,
Yeah,
four maybe, I'd be happy. Deadlift if I can do about 250 for about the same number, I'd be happy. And I bench very rarely. I do a lot more like incline stuff, and or I'll do dumbbell work as opposed to bench. Again, I probably sound like a broken record here repeating you, but I've got a dodgy shoulder for rugby as well.
yeah.
Again, I don't know why we play that stupid egg chasing game, but we do.
We're all
Um,
just failed athletes from other sports, are we not? In the games.
I think that's how it works. Yeah, I think that's the label that we sort of we put on. But like I've always struggled with bench. It just beyond a certain weight when there's certain stresses on my body, it just doesn't feel too comfortable. So, for example, I in my garage myself, I've never benched above like 130 just because I don't feel safe.
Yeah,
So again, if I can hit 120, 130 for a bench by May, I'll be quite happy. And then obviously we had our Olympic lift chat. If we go on the numbers I'd like to hit, and then what I think should be, an amateur athlete, as you're calling it. If we go, say clean, like cleans are my jam. Like I love doing cleans, hand cleans, breaking them down. I would say if I can clean 140, I'm fairly content. My best's about 165, but that was a few years ago now. So if I can hit 140 for a clean, I'm quite happy. For a snatch, I don't do a lot of full snatches over the head. I do a lot of snatch pulls. Just again, my shoulder doesn't really enjoy them too much. So I'll just pull them up there. If that, I can get 110, 120, I'm quite happy. And then if we look at, I guess, will we say push press?
yeah. Push. I kind of class push press as more of an Olympic lift, although I'm not jerking and dipping under the bar.
Yeah.
But when I'm programming for push press, I would never really do high reps. So that differs to like Matt Vincent's training lab where he would be doing 10 tens on push press. But I've always treated push press as more of an Olympic lift.
If I did 10 tens on push press, Sinky, I wouldn't be able to wipe my arse.
Yeah, yeah,
I literally
yeah.
wouldn't be able to use my arms properly.
No,
Push press again. If I can hit 130, 140 maybe for like a set of two or three, I'd be quite happy with that. But
yeah.
I really like see just military press, just strict. I've really ended up enjoying doing that, and I laugh because it used to be one of my worst lifts. But
That's why
what
you've got a big Braemar put on you.
is that? Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah,
Um,
I've heard that there's a good transfer over, but I think what's important to mention, especially for Highland Games, is that the Olympic lifts are much more important than the power lifts. I mean, with a squat, deadlift, or bench, you can grind them out. You're never grinding out a throw. It has to
no,
be explosive. So the Olympic lifts certainly have more transfer over to any throwing, to be honest. Um, my numbers on those are relatively similar, and that probably shows that it's somewhere that I need to put a bit more focus, because my power lifts are quite strong, whereas my Olympic lifts, in comparison, aren't quite at that level. So I think my best ever power clean would be about 170 kilos, but I have real problems with the rack of the power clean.
right,
So I don't tend to go much over kind of 150. Snatch I don't do, just because of shoulder issues as well. And then with push press, I love it because for a long time when I couldn't bench press, um, I would I would push press. So for a good 3 or 4 years, that was my primary focus for upper body strength, was just focusing on the push press. And my max lift on that is 180 kilos. But again, I'm quite proud of that one because it's an explosive movement.
yeah,
Um, and in no way am I grinding that out. But again, I'll just reinforce it that it doesn't really convert to my shot put necessarily. I would need to spend a lot more time on the field, I think, to see increases in my throws. Um, Although, again, the baseline strength's important, it doesn't mean I'm going to necessarily throw further.
yeah. I mean, if you look at those lifts, I mean, I'm honestly blown away by your push press. But if you look at those lifts on like an amateur thrower trying to come in and do a bit of games, I would say for a clean, if you're at like 90, 100 kilos, I think you'll be all right. Maybe even slightly below that. Again, I don't snatch, but if you can snatch, say probably 75, 80 kilos, you'll probably be all right. And for a push press, you're probably looking for at least 100, I would say. I don't know if you disagree with any of them or you'd enhance them or.
No, I'd absolutely agree, and I think that's not taken into consideration anything that we do on the field. I think just to compete at a reasonable level in the Highland Games, those are kind of minimum numbers that you'd be looking for in those lifts, and then we can focus on the actual events. Um, so yeah, hopefully that gives people a rough idea of kind of where we're at. We've obviously both been at the World Championships. From knowing what strength level some other top athletes are at, I would say we're probably middle of the range. There's some very strong guys, and there's others who focus much more on their throwing. But even that said, like if I think of someone like Matthew Doherty, who for I'm not sure how many times he won the Canadian Championship, but he was a top Canadian thrower for a number of years, and he was always a smaller athlete. He was maybe about 250 pounds maximum. I think he probably sat more around 230. He had some huge throws, even with the heavy implements. Um, his static lifts probably wouldn't be as high, but his Olympic lifts would easily match what we've kind of said there. So yeah, just that does have more relevance to throwing as the Olympic movements.
Yeah, I think it's an exercise we could maybe do ourselves, but if like you take like you get the in football and baseball and that you get the cards and it's got people's stats. I think it'd be interesting for both you and I to like fill it out and what we think our stats at in terms of like I always think you've got like strength throwers, you've got athletic throwers, you've got speed throwers, you've got like technical throwers. And I think
Yeah.
it'd be interesting for both of us to sort of periodise ourselves and put ourselves like onto the program there and what we think our strengths are. Because I would honestly say I don't think there's anything I excel at, but there's nothing I'm like terrible at. I just kind of
Yeah.
glide along the middle. Um,
Where would you put yourself? So you quite often say that you're more of a technique thrower. Who would you place as a power thrower?
a power thrower. I mean, in
Yeah,
certain events, I would say you.
yeah,
Again, this is another interesting one. I would say in events it differs. Like people can throw the hammer with power, or people can sort of finesse the hammer. Then you could take like I would say I get quite a nice pull in the hammer when it goes well. That is. But like if you look at something like maybe my putt, I'm probably not got the cleanest connection, so it varies from event to event. Um, and again, I'm thinking more people I throw against week in, week out, rather than probably like when we're at the Worlds and whatnot. But again, I think everyone will have their different strengths, and it becomes a point where it's more about improving your weaknesses than your strengths.
yeah.
Um,
So if I give an example, and the one that springs to mind for me, just because I did a lot of training with him when I was younger, and even now, some of the comments I've seen recently. So Jason Young, um, Jason, I would put as a power thrower.
100%.
One of the most powerful guys I've ever seen. Not necessarily much focus on technique, but in many events would overcome that with power. And he was therefore really strong in the caber. He also had good timing, but he could kind of utilize that power in the caber. Weight over the bar was strong. But I've also seen Jason throw a standing putt over 52 foot. I've seen him throw 130 foot in the hammer with what you would probably say is not the smoothest technique.
Bicep
Um,
tricep technique.
yeah, bicep, tricep, but he had them. So I think that's probably a good example of someone. And then recently, like I put up a push press video, just doing 140 for reps, and Jason commented, and I'm not sure how old Jason will be now. He's over 50 anyway, and he said, "Oh, I'm just getting back to some pressing. I did some reps, heated military press at 140 the other day." And I was thinking, I don't think I've ever been anywhere close to that kind of strength.
Yeah.
And some of the numbers that I've seen from other guys like Spencer Tyler, I think even John Van Buren, like has a massive deadlift, as did Mike Zolkovic, who for a number of years held the world record in the weight for height. But in certain lifts, throwers are some of the strongest athletes in the world, and you see that with top level shot putters. Like if you follow Joe Kovacs, he's doing like close to 400 kilos for reps on the squat, which is just blows my mind.
Yeah, that's it's kind of mind boggling. That's a rabbit hole to go down as well. But
Yeah,
one of the points we had was, and this will probably be quite a short one, but if you look at your training, right, and I guess we could say you're in the middle of winter, it's December, right? It's January. The same question I'm going to put to you also for May. What would you say your split is for lifts versus throws?
yeah. So pretty simple answer for me. Up until I suppose January, I'm lifting 3 times a week, and I'm actually not releasing an implement, which is very different to you. So I'm going out and I'm drilling twice a week. And when I say drilling, I'm going out the front of the house. I'm using the middle line in the road as a guide, and I'm doing line drills as a 28. I'm doing step ins for the modified South African on the stone. I'm swinging the hammer, and I'm doing some kettlebell swings for the weight over the bar twice a week. Whereas that focus will very much shift into the new year, where I'll still be lifting 3 times a week, but I'll aim to start throwing up until March about twice a week. So not so much drills, just get out and actually have 2 throwing sessions. Once March hits and the clocks change, I'm then looking to match my lifting sessions with my throwing. So I'll lift 3 times a week and I'll do 3 full throwing sessions. Um, I don't necessarily throw every single event in those throwing sessions, but through the week, I'll have hit at least 1 to 2 sessions on every event, um, and they're just an hour. So I would tend to take about 5 warm up throws and then 5 to 8 full throws. Um, Sometimes I break the throws down and do some specific drills for each. But in terms of frequency, up until the new year, it's just 2 drill sessions. Into the new year, it's 2 throwing sessions, and then leading into the season, I want to be out throwing 3 times a week. What about yourself?
I honestly don't differ much from you. It's maybe just what I do that's different. So I've always like if people ask me about my training, and I know I said this previously, like I'm a weekend warrior. So I like
Yeah,
to train Monday to Friday. So my current schedule is I lift a Monday, Wednesday, and a Friday. I throw on a Tuesday and I throw on a Thursday. And I will always do some auxiliary stuff at a weekend if the time comes or if an event's going really badly. So right
yeah,
now, that if you look at me for the last week, I have lifted Monday. I threw Tuesday. I lifted Wednesday. Had Thursday off, more so because there's stuff going on, and then Friday I'll be lifting as well. So it's pretty much similar to yourself. Once I hit January, I'll be throwing twice a week. The biggest difference between you and I is I'm probably doing drills etc. the same way you are. So if we take a normal session, say I'm throwing all events, I'll go into I have an indoor facility near me in Grangemouth,
yeah.
which
That
is just
makes
an
a big
indoor throwing
difference.
arena. Pretty good, honestly. So I've been throwing there for years. I'll go in there. I'll set up the shot put circle against one of the nets, maybe like 5-6 meters from me. So I've no idea what I'm throwing. I'll do a load of like seated putts, so concentrating on just getting a nice finish. I'll throw right and left handed. I'll then stand up and do a drill with very little leg movement where I'm delivering it. Again, just 4 or 5 of them. I'll do the same, bringing my leg in, and then I'll do like what I call like competition putts. So you've got 3 throws. You're trying to get one in, and then try and achieve your best throw. And then I'll switch
Yeah,
from that to like glide drills. And I will not allow myself to do an actual technical shot put throw, as in marking the tape out, seeing how far it is, and he'll probably march. I do not let
yeah,
myself throw and know how far it is. The 28, I will literally just turn and turn and turn with it. I don't really throw it much. And then the hammer, I'm just doing swings for days just now. Again, it's probably more similar to what you're doing than you probably think. It's
It sounds
again,
it sounds like it. I think there's massive benefit in having that indoor facility, but at the same time, I was getting frustrated because, as everyone knows, I'm now a man of the modern world. I touched on it before, but I'm on Instagram again, and at Sync Patients, by the way. But I'm now seeing videos of everyone training inside, um, in these top class facilities, and I'm scraping about Inverness looking for a bit of concrete to try and do some drills on. And I was getting really like wound up and in my head about it. And I was speaking to my dad, um, and he's always good for bringing me back down to earth because he just said, Sinclair, he was like, Sinclair, when have you ever had an indoor facility? And I was like, no, I've not. He's like, well, have you thrown all right? I was like, sometimes. And he was like, well, stop going on about it and just get fit. And I think that's quite good advice. Is sometimes we can overthink and worry, and he's so good at just bringing it back to the basics
yeah. I mean,
and say, look, get as fit as you possibly can, and go and do some drills because once March comes around and you've got daylight till 8 p.m., into April, there's plenty of time to get out and do the reps.
so
And then, as I said, we're throwing Saturday, Sunday every single week from May through till September. So there's time to fix things. If you can hit the new year in decent shape and ready to go and do those reps, you're going to be in a much better place rather than kind of like paralysis through analysis and worrying about
yeah.
where you're going to train and what you're going to do.
I mean, your dad's a fisherman, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, yeah,
He
yeah.
100% just he caught you in a line, reeled you in, and brought you back down to earth. There, that's for sure.
He's. I tell you though, see with he does lobster pots, and he's really fit and like muscular in the upper body still because he's pulling in lobster pots all day. So it keeps him in good shape even now. I'm trying to get him to do some masters throwing because I think it would be really cool to go and do a games with him, like get a trip.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's right in saying that don't overthink it. Just get in good shape. Like for me, it doesn't take long to get strong now. And that, like, people talk about muscle memory, but I do think it's there. And for me to go from kind of ground zero, and that would be a couple of months of no lifting, to being strong again, it would only take about 8 weeks. An 8 week block will have me pretty strong and close to maxes again. So
Yeah, if
if you
all you had was 8 weeks, you'd be happy enough like engaging in a season. But you want more. I'm assuming.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Like, I think 8 weeks is enough time to get strong. So the focus, therefore, should more be on the other side of it, which is the throwing.
Right.
Because if I get really strong by December, I'm probably going to get weak again before the season starts in May.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to maintain that for that length of time. So that I have learned to not go too heavy too soon, and hence why I'm kind of taking this, not break, but just slow phase into training and lifting for next season. That said, I am getting older. It's easy to get strong. It's much more difficult to stay mobile and fast. And I found that if I don't work on those things now, there is a bit of a drop off. And I'll kind of come on to what I've been doing. But do you put any specific focus on, I suppose, your mobility and flexibility, Kyle?
So once a week just now, and again this will change. I will do. I'm doing this week about just now because again I'm sort of lowering myself back in rather than diving in. I get 6 hurdles and I do a load of hurdle work, whether that be hip mobility stuff or literal just bounds. So I'm probably doing a bit more plyometrics than I would probably describe as being like mobility. But I think a lot of the hurdle stuff, like that's one of the things I credit for helping my adductor slash abductors.
Yeah,
I combined that with physio and working on that, and I think it's really helped. And I think the other thing, again, I wouldn't say I go out and focus on flexibility, but see swimming, like I mostly do front crawl or what's the other name for it?
the breaststroke.
I believe it or not, I use breaststroke as my recovery, but you've got front crawl, or I think they call it, is it freestyle?
Freestyle is front crawl, yeah. Yeah.
Ah, yeah. So that tends to be what I focus on. That's my main sort of get my heart rate up. You get long stretching movements to reach out. So I think that's the closest thing I do to flexibility. But
Yeah.
plyometrics are something that I've been doing every season since I was about 13 or 14.
Yeah.
Again, I think they
Fair
probably
athletics.
are. I feel they're more important as I've gotten older, and I know you've just sort of touched on that. Like, are you ticking any of those boxes you've just mentioned?
Yeah, trying hard. And again, I talk about advice from my dad. I wish I'd listened when I was 16, because I probably would have thrown a lot further. But I do listen now, and I've started to incorporate that. If I'm honest, right through my rugby career, um, I was hopeless with that type of thing. Like, I didn't do any mobility, rarely did any sort of flexibility, and I was the same with recovery. There was no focus on recovery. Whereas now I kind of listen to my body. One of the simplest things that I do is just follow a YouTube video called Limber 11.
Right.
It's a guy, Joe DeFranco, and it's about 15 years old now, but it's all about hip mobility. I bought the Supple Leopard book by Kelly Starrett. It's a massive book, and I've not read a page of it, if I'm honest. It overwhelms me. So Limber 11, I can stick it on YouTube, and it takes about 15 minutes, 20 minutes to run through. There's a bit of foam rolling, a lot of focus on hip mobility. And if I can hit that maybe 2, 3 times a week, and I notice like a measurable difference in just how I feel when I'm out throwing. Because so much of throwing is about separation and being able to get your hips in first. And if you're not mobile, you're just not able to do that. So I'm finding that's working really well. I'm not sure how I would cope with hurdles. I try and do, from my rugby days, I do a bit of agility. Um, so really simple, just like stick some poles out and do some footwork. I quite like the speed ladders as well.
Oh, aye.
And then I've started more recently looking at incorporating some kind of step-up drills, literally just to like an 8-inch block. I remember years ago seeing a clip of Reese Hoffa, the shot putter, doing a lot of footwork drills, and I think Ryan Vieira did as well. But I definitely think that those things help. And just in terms of being light on your feet, skipping is great as a warm up too.
Yeah.
So I've tried to, on my lifting days, I'm trying to incorporate nothing like substantial, just 5 sets of 20 skips. And I quite like that because you feel that even though you're then going on to lift, which is a bit more static at times, you feel that that warm up's just reminding you of why you're training.
Yeah, I know what you mean. You're doing these stationary lifts that are like I wouldn't use the word explosive, but it's like a stationary like rip. But I know what you
Yeah,
mean. Like skipping is something I've slowly introduced. I'm probably not doing as many as you are. I maybe do like two sets, maybe 30, 40 if you're
can you do a
lucky.
crossover?
Certainly I can do one or two, but I can't sit and force it out. Put it that way.
I think we
But
should
I've
introduce
definitely.
a skipping challenge. Eh?
Oh God, no videos of me skipping. Put it that way. But it's definitely something I've been enjoying. I think it's a great way to warm up the lower half of the body. But I find it
Yeah,
interesting what you were saying about the hip and the mobility videos you've been watching. You kind of forget sometimes that your body is like a tower, and everything you do is like an earthquake. And the biggest balancing point for the earthquake is the middle point, which is your hip. You know,
yeah.
so your hips are really the thing that are engaging constantly every time you take a step, to jump, to lunge. So they probably are one of the most important areas to get clicking and going.
Yeah, especially in throwing. And like hammer, for example, I don't get my hips in enough. I probably do rely more on strength, which is why I don't throw the hammer as far as guys who do use their hips. Like if you look at any top level hammer thrower yourself, even like back to Bill Anderson, really good hip engagement. Um, and I think like I've seen people. Scott Ryder's probably a good example. Whereas when he first started the games, and to be honest, for a good 5 years, he wasn't really getting his hips into the throw, although he was obviously in his other events like the 28, really noticeable in the shot put. But with the hammer, when he started getting his hips in, he went from like 125 average to probably over 140 quite consistently. And that was like over the duration of one off season. I
Yeah,
remember he came out at Blackford and threw about 142, and no one really knew what had happened. But if you watch him closely, he kept his low point over his right, and at the finish he was really getting his hips into the throw. It makes a massive difference. So yeah, that's something that I'll certainly be focusing on, and I'm focusing on already for next season. In terms of the flexibility, again, there's always debate over whether you should do kind of dynamic stretching or static stretching, and I've seen a lot of stuff. Who's the boy? I've never actually met him, and I think he's still an amateur thrower. Is it Nick? Is it Nick Aston?
oh yeah, Nick. Yeah, I think he's done a few pro games now. I've
He's
spoke
done
to him a
pro.
wee bit on
Okay.
Instagram, but yeah, he's been doing some. I mean, I'm just going to say he's been doing some weird shit that I'm looking at going, okay, I'm curious to see how that plays out.
Some of it's wild, but it makes me feel horrendous because I look at it and like there is absolutely no chance that I'm going to be doing some of that stuff. But I do think. Do you remember Nathan Parker?
Yeah, Nate.
Nathan started incorporating a lot of sort of flexibility stuff as well, and I remember him saying that he really felt it helped with events like weight over the bar because obviously you're dropping between your legs and you're reaching as far back as you can. So I think to an extent, flexibility as well as mobility in your joints is really beneficial for throwing. You don't want to be at the same time. You still need that core strength, so you don't want to be too loose, especially for Highland Games. Like we've seen quite a few discus throwers come in to the games,
Yeah,
relatively good level discus throwers, and often that's somewhere that they'll struggle. Is just like throwing the 56 for distance. You need a different sort of stability and core strength than you do to throwing the discus, and that's probably one where if you're too if you're too mobile and you're too flexible, you're going to struggle a wee bit.
Are you saying you need to be stiff and awkward to throw the heavy weight?
Awkward and heavy,
Well, that's something I tick in abundance. But
aye.
one thing we did open up, and again, I think we're going to hope to do a bit more of this, was sort of here's the topic on social media. We'll put posts out saying here's what we're going to discuss. Does anybody have any questions? And we've taken a whole load of these, and any of the ones sort of focusing on training or anything involved in that, we've kind of chose them for this episode. And one of the first ones I chose out was, do you have any useful drills that you maybe incorporate that people wouldn't think of for any of the throws in the gym or indoors or, out with being out throwing stuff?
Yeah. So for me, any drills that I would do, I don't do many specific drills in the gym. But as I've already said, I do drill a lot with the implements,
Yeah.
and it's really simple. So, like, I'll aim to go out and do 5 turns of the 28, sticking to the line. So, really simple line drill. No release, and I often use a strap rather than hook the weight, just so that I'm not focusing on my grip or anything. I'm purely trying to keep my momentum in a straight line. So I think line drills are great. Hammer swings, obviously, varied weights. Um, when I start throwing, I will try and throw light and heavy. I used to make the mistake of only throwing the light implements and then just kind of relying on gym strength for when it came to the heavy events. But no, for me, nothing too wild, nothing too specific in the gym. I just focus on the core lifts in the gym. Um, I've started incorporating the mobility, and then I try and my, I suppose, specific exercises are all out on the field.
All right. See, I'm probably similar to yourself. The only thing I could maybe say that I do that you might not think of is sometimes if I'm in the gym, the weather's really crappy or I can't get access to an indoor facility, I'll just pick up like a 10, 15, 20 kilo weight and I'll just do hammer swings with it. I'll just pick up and I'll swing it. I'm a big fighter for swinging left and right handed just because of the injuries I've had. All of
Yeah,
my Highland Games injuries have been hammer related. So I kind of swing both ways. Hey, more so just to keep the mobility there and try and balance the strength out a bit. And
yeah.
I'll
I've
also,
noticed you do that at the games as well, don't you?
oh, I have to now. It's like a mental thing. The other exercise I do that I think helps with general mobility and throwing is, do you ever do bus drivers?
I don't even know what it is.
So bus drivers, you sort of put your back against the wall, you put your feet in the ground, you hold the weight up as if you're driving a bus, sort of straight in your arms, and you just turn one hand to the top, the other one back round, and it's like left to right movements, like you're driving a bus.
Yeah, okay.
I think they're really good for like shoulder health and like just general mobility, and they also just feel quite good at like the end of a session. Doesn't need to be heavy, just turning round and getting the hands moving. They're probably the two I do most often. I wouldn't say I have any like trade secrets or anything like that.
Yeah, and again, I think you can get overwhelmed with what's out there, and I'm sure there. Please, if people do have specific exercises that they do, let us know because it might be worthwhile trying to incorporate some. But no, for me, I just focus on the basics. And I think there's probably value in adding specifics. But again, we're training for 5 different events. So most of my focus, I would say, needs to go on that rather than worrying too much about what I'm doing in the gym, which is specific.
Yeah, and
What about something that's come up on the questions, Kyle, and we've not really touched on it. We've touched on what we do in terms of lifting, but what what is your focus when it comes to like percentages? Are you pushing periods for max weight, or are you more focusing on the speed of the bar when it comes to the gym? What's your Did it change from one period to another as you get near the season, or what's your breakdown of that look like?
so for years I did the 24 rep program that Willie Robertson sort of told me about, and that's that you always do 24 reps, 3 8s, 4 6s, 6 4s. And the idea
Yeah,
would be that you're always doing the same amount of reps, but the weight would change. I changed that like a good few years ago now, But I basically I train for strength mostly and trying to get
Yeah,
like stronger for the start of the season. And then once the season starts and just there's like a transition period, I'll do lower weights and just go for pure speed. But I'm not doing like I've seen some people getting like a literal meters per second like scanner calculator out and oh that was a good one. I don't do any of that. I just do lighter reps for maybe the same amount of weights and that the whole point is fast and then controlled as well. I wouldn't
yeah.
say
So
it's something I
you're more just
really
doing it. You're more just doing it by feel as opposed
I
to
I
actual
don't have
measure.
fix on like oh this one needs to be 2 meters a second or anything like that. I definitely don't do that.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm probably quite similar. I think like up until up until April, I'll focus on strength from January till April, and it'll be really simple. It'll be five fives, um, taken from Matt Vincent's training lab. Only three of those five sets are actually working sets at full weight,
Got you.
um, whereas the first two are just kind of building up to that. Um, my Olympic movements are always kind of focused on speed, and if I feel that I'm not fast enough, I just drop the weight. So keep it as simple as possible. Once I hit the season, I'll try and lift heavy on a Monday,
Right.
um, and that'll either be like a heavy squat and a bench press, or a heavy deadlift and a bench press. And then on a Wednesday in season will just be Olympic. So a power clean and a push press at maybe 60-70% just for 3 reps rather than 5. So for any Olympic movements, I'm never doing more than 3 reps. That's probably the difference. Is I'm not trying to do high volume. I'm not even doing fives. I'm just purely focused on the power and the speed with the
Yeah.
Olympic movements. So yeah, and it's 3 sets of 3 reps.
I mean that's probably me during season. I'd be doing those numbers.
Yeah,
I tend to sit probably between 8 and 4 at the lowest until the season starts. But
yeah.
one of the big questions that was actually reoccurring when we put this out on social media was Sinclair. A very simple question that I know has been more at the forefront in a lot of strength sports and throws is to deadlift or not to deadlift.
So for Highland Games, I think deadlift. I hate it. It's my least favorite lift, probably because it's one of my weaker lifts. I've had lower back issues through rugby, and I often get a bulging disc, which it kind of feels like you're standing on a Swiss ball, and if you're balanced, you're absolutely fine. But sometimes if you go off balance, that's when it'll jar. Um, so for me, as much as I hate it, I think it provides some real stability and strength in your lower back. Um, I've had a few people recently say to focus on the hex bar deadlift, which again, I kind of feel like I'm getting that leg drive through my squats.
Yeah,
I do back squats and front squats. Um, but I'm going to stick with standard deadlift for this off season. I feel that it converts quite well into the caber and the weight for height because you're hinging, you're driving through. Obviously, the Olympic, the power clean does more, but in order to put some extra weight on, I do think that given that we're throwing heavier implements than athletics, the deadlift has benefits for Highland Games. What's your thoughts?
I mean, I could just sit here and go same. Um, but honestly, when you said you feel your deadlift gives you stability, I couldn't agree more. I think it's like a general strength exercise that the full body's involved in some way or another. And I've only been deadlifting for 2 or 3 years. It's not something I ever did on mass. It was like an every now and again thing. I feel
Yeah,
more stable, and I feel like the general structure of my body's a bit more secure. I don't think you need to be sitting pulling 300 kilos, 350 kilos. I think if you can do 200, you'll probably largely be fine. I mean, I'm certainly not doing all that much heavier than that, but I think it has its place. It just shouldn't be one of the sole focuses, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. And I think most injuries with the deadlift happen when people are going for max reps. Or what I've done a few times is because my inner plates are usually bumper plates. Um, and I've got a bad tendency to like try and keep the tension and just touch and go. Whereas if you're ramping the weight up on your high 200s and you're trying to touch and go, um, if you get that wrong, it's going to take you wildly off balance, and I think that's where you've got potentially, your potential for injury. Often people get injured on the down phase of the deadlift as well.
Yeah,
So I think like sometimes put the force through the bar, then drop the weight.
yeah.
Um, and again, come back to Ryan Vieira, like some of his old training logs, you'll see that he never really focused at all on the down phase. Um, Everything was just putting power into the bar, which I suppose throwing wise would be into the implement. Because we're never really catching weights at the games. We're only putting force into them.
You certainly don't want to be
Um,
catching them, do you?
no, I've seen a few close calls in my days, but um, yeah, and again, I don't know. That's probably one that there's a debate on because bodybuilding wise, they'll tell you that the down phase is what builds a lot of strength. But for me, I think I'm going to try and reset each rep on the deadlift this off season. I've been kind of just holding tension and doing touch and goes, but that's something that leading into the new year, as the weights go up, I'll probably reset for each lift.
One of the other things that we sort of had asked or hinted at, and we've kind of covered it organically, was what is your training volume during the winter versus the season? If I can quickly touch on this, I would
Yeah,
say that my focus out with the season is probably, I'd say it's 60-40 throwing. And then during the season, I honestly believe we throw so much and compete so often that I will not be going out and blasting throwing sessions unless an event isn't going well. If
yeah.
something's not clicking or I've got a bad habit creeped in, I will 100% go out and start drilling that. But I would say that during the season, I'm just trying to maintain my strength and keep my events ticking where I can. And I would say that my flexibility, my plyometrics, my mobility probably plays in more during the season. And I'm just trying to hold on to the strength and the conditioning I had in the off season. I don't know if you would have something different to say.
No, very similar, very similar. I think between January and April, you're getting your reps in, and for us, because we compete so frequently, um, I'm very similar in that I'll go out and have a throw if something's not working, um, but for the most part, I'm focused on recovery during the season. I will still, just to feel good, do some lifting. I have gone through seasons where I've dropped the lifting, but then by the time I get to sort of September, I don't feel good if that makes sense.
And then I mean we've kind of touched on all the main things. Ray, Victoria Ray, Axe Thrower Ray, put it to us, and this is a bit of a light-hearted one. Sinclair, what is your ideal eggs to black pudding ratio?
it's it's a hotly debated topic. Uh, I'd go a double black pudding with an egg in the middle.
See, it's
Got to
funny,
be a
right?
runny, got to be a runny yolk.
I agree with the runny yolk. I like two eggs, and it depends if the black pudding's like the wee sausage or the big slice. Um,
Yeah, true.
I have seen myself before eating like a full sausage just diced up and grilled because sometimes you just fancy a bit of black pudding. Um, but yeah, I've got to say, as long as both of them are in the party, I'm quite happy to be in attendance. Um,
Stornoway black pudding's on.
that is naughty. But this rather intriguingly leads us straight into one of the next points, which is diet. Now, I'm going to put my hands up and say diet's probably one of the weakest points of my training. I tend to, if I'm hungry, I'll just eat.
Yeah,
And I'll have mindful periods where I'm trying to be more careful, but I tend to like crash diet if I ever feel really, really fat. I'll literally eat chicken, brown rice with a bit of soy and some veg. That's me. I don't know what
yeah.
your diet in front is.
Yeah, well, I would say like I've at times been far too heavy. I think with games there's a fine line between um, eating enough to recover or eating too much and being too slow. And certainly last year I felt quite sluggish on the field. And I said already like I was really strong in the gym, but I didn't feel mobile, and I think that was largely down to just being too heavy. So I'll probably look to drop about £30 over this off season. I think I need to if I'm going to keep throwing at a high level. Certainly, as you get older, it's easier to put weight on metabolism wise. But I don't track anything really. I might at times do bits and pieces, but once I've tracked for a month, I kind of have a good idea of where I need to be.
Yeah.
And calorie wise, it's never too high. I think like if you're eating somewhere around 3,000 calories, 3,500 calories, that's more than enough to sustain your training. But it is wild when you do start tracking. You could easily be eating 5,000 calories if you're not watching.
Oh, easily.
But no, protein I think is the focus. Ensuring that I've got enough protein in my diet, and obviously fat. And then if I'm looking to drop weight like I am at the moment, I'll just drop the carbs a little bit, and by no means low carb at all. Like I'll have I always have porridge with protein in the morning, and like a wrap at lunchtime, and then I'll have carbs around training in the evening as well. Um, but yeah, I think just being, like you said, being mindful with it definitely helps, and that can be harder in the season as well. Like I've noticed, Craig Winslow is very well prepared when he comes to the games, and I noticed you've started doing that the last couple of years. Like it's so easy to go and pick up a burger
Oh,
from the
it really
from,
is.
from from one of the stalls, isn't it?
I mean, Craig and I have went to a few games together last year and the year before. So Craig makes up like rice bowls, and he's like a chef sometimes. So there's a few times where I've driven and he's made me a bowl, and honestly, it's like what you'd sit down at a restaurant to eat. But last year I got two little like hot pots. I mean, the hard thing's getting up and being consistent with it. But I didn't go to a games last year without a pot full of just rice, veggies, a little bit of chili oil or soy, and just some salmon. And see, having that just to put in your body when you need it. Like this is the truth. We're doing an explosive sport. It's a long, 5-6 hour day. There's times where you need calories and just protein and just think you just need fuel inside you. And a lot of
Yeah.
time, as you said, the easy thing is I'll go get a burger. So I've been trying to introduce that. So I guess I'm slightly more prepared than I probably give myself credit. Speaking of being prepared, though, you have joined the ranks of the Ice Bash, right? You ordered a dodgy one on the internet and it never turned up. I believe
Yeah.
you've made some renovations. Is that correct?
Yeah, I got one. It's like a portable one, XXL, obviously, but yeah, I've got it in the back garden now, and I'm trying to be relatively consistent in terms of jumping in the morning. Not for any length of time, just for 2 or 3 minutes. And to be honest, I don't know. Like, there's a lot of conflicting research on them as to whether or not they actually help with training. But what it does do is wake you up in the morning.
Oh yeah,
Like, there's no doubt about that. Whether or not I'll continue into the season, I'm not sure. Like, I know you're a fan of a river dip after a games, whereas I find if I do that and I have to compete the next day, it tends to sap all energy out of my legs.
it's
And it could just be psychological, but I don't like doing it between games, and it's similar to what I said to you when we were at Worlds. Like, I also wouldn't get treatment on the field during a games day either.
yeah.
I'll tend to kind of shy away from that. I know what works in season, and it's probably not something that I'll continue into the game season.
I know it's definitely sort of taken by storm. Like there's loads of people doing, even people I know that perhaps aren't athletes. Like they've taken
Bit of a phase.
to yeah. I mean, I just wonder if it'll stay here, but yeah, like I mean, Craig and I, like we probably go for a duke as we'd call it in a river or the sea, probably after I'd say like 2/3, 75% of the games. And I do know what you mean. Like if it's a Saturday and you go in the water, there is times where the day after I'm like my legs aren't quite here. But there's times where my legs are also jelly, and the only way to sort of freshen them and really shock them is to go into the water. But I have to say that the coldest swim I've had with Craig has been Stonehaven Harbour. Just because that's out in the East Coast, we go in there quite often when we're on the way home. And my God, we've had a few where you're in for 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes, and I'm like, buddy, I need to go out here. I'm starting to feel very warm, which is obviously the warning. But I'm a big fan of it. It's something I've been doing for a few years now, and It's funny you're saying it wakes you up in the morning. I will never forget. I was doing cold showers every morning, and I
Yeah.
remember it had got into winter a good few years ago, and I jumped into the shower, and it was freezing cold. And I remember getting out, and I went to walk my dog Gus, and I stood outside, and it was like frosty, and I was so cold and miserable on the walk. I've never done it again.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sold 100%, but I've quite enjoyed it the last couple of weeks, just as a start to the day. Like I said, definitely wakes you up and gets you in a good mindset. It's more the feeling for like the half hour after it, as you're warming up again.
Yeah,
You feel really good in that time. Um, but in terms of recovery, I don't know. The jury's out.
yeah. It seems to be the general takeaway from it. And we were going to end with a very simple question, and that was, where do PBs come from in your opinion, Sinclair patients?
PBs as in personal best.
Let's go for throws. Yeah, PBs or PRs as they're called. Where do you think they come from in terms of, like, you're at a games, you're in the third round, you need to summon like an all-time best throw to win it. Where do you think that comes from?
I think it's your mindset. I think nothing else. If you're prepared, you've done your training in the winter. You've done your reps on the field. I think it's purely mental. There's obviously other factors, but they're the same for everyone. So if you're not injured, and it comes down to that, and it's something you're capable of, I would say it's purely mental.
Yeah, I think the mental side's the biggest part of it, but I think, like, I mean, I don't want to say mental stability, but the I guess the stability in your mind to say, right, I'm in condition to throw a PB or a PR. I think that comes from you knowing you've done all the other parts of it and giving you the confidence to go in and maybe try and push your foot down that bit harder, move in a certain direction that bit more, and try and stay within bounds. Like, I think it is a mindset thing. But
Yeah,
for me, it's the confidence of being able to sit and say, I've done the reps over the winter. Like, it's the whole, you earn your medals in the winter, you pick them up in the summer.
yeah, yeah. No, 100%. It's mental, and it is. It's massively down to the confidence to go 110%. If you're holding back, you're never going to throw far, and that's why you need to have done those reps in the winter, in the spring, so that you can go into those situations and be confident, confident in your ability. And if everything aligns, that's like the best feeling where you've gone in, you've given 110%, and you get the kind of reward of a big throw. And we've probably had a lot of situations like that, and competition brings that out. So obviously, if you're going out, I suppose like there's a different side to it where some of your biggest throws in the hammer, for example, might be when you're not under pressure,
Oh,
but that's
100%.
just because you're relaxed and everything's aligning. Whereas I think those you get more satisfaction from those big competition throws where you just put everything on the line.
Yeah, I find it hard to argue with you. Like I touched on it before, that a lot of my best throws come in the first round when I'm not really expecting anything. So yeah, I think you earn the right to throw your PBs, and I think it comes through the confidence of you knowing that you've done, as much as you can to put yourself in a PB or a PR condition. But I just realised how long we've been talking. Sinclair and I both kind of said, "Oh, this will be a nice wee half-hour episode," but here we are. And I think we will say that this episode was recorded remotely, whereas the other ones we've done were actually in person, and we're hoping to do more in person, just because it sounds better and there's less going on. But we're hoping to do these and continue them every second week. Normally a Friday we'll release it, and we'll do that into the new year. And then who knows what it'll look like during the season? We're not really sure yet, are we?
No, not sure yet, but I'll be down in a week's time for the Christmas break. My in-laws live relatively close to Kyle, so let us know if there's any topics you'd like us to cover, and we might even sneak a wee mulled wine, Kyle.
Wow, are you technically here publicly asking me out for like a sort of date, or what's the story?
We could we could go for a wee date and then do the podcast after. Yeah,
We could do it in a bar and sell tickets. We're probably there already, right?
I don't know. We'd get mobbed. We're pretty well known now.
But folks, thanks for tuning in. Again, I quite enjoy it when you are leaving like content for us to talk about or put out there. So please continue doing so. And not much to say other than thanks for listening to us waffle on about our training.
Yeah, no, agreed. Thanks for tuning in. Just the final thing. When I go down the road for Christmas, I will have our sample Life Behind the Trig t-shirts. So we'll get a post up with the next episode, which will show those. If you would like to buy one, let us know because we'll gauge interest and then look to get a batch printed up.
Look at this guy with his marketing. Can't beat that. You can't buy that. You've got it or you've not. But thank you again, folks, and we'll see you in the next one.
Cheers.